So I want to talk briefly about the controversy that happened this weekend at the Revolt Summit that went on this past weekend in Atlanta. It was a confrontation between T.I., Tip, and Candace Owens. The Revolt Summit was a 3-day or 2-day event held here in Atlanta, put on by P. Diddy. Basically, it was a gathering of Black voices, ultimately to discuss Black empowerment through political means, economic means, social justice, social issues, etc. So they had a panel at their last event that had Killer Mike, Tip, Katrina Pearson, who, if you don't know, I believe she was on Trump's campaign at one point or in his administration. I'm not 100% sure, but she's MAGA. And she might be a Fox News contributor, but she's a Trump supporter. And Tamika Mallory, she was kind of one of the leaders in the Women's March, that whole movement. Tip, T.I., I think I said that, Candace Owens, and there was someone else there that people are calling online Potato Salad Man. I don't know what his name was or why he was there, but he had on an outfit that when you looked at it, it just made you think of potato salad. I don't know. But anyway, Candace Owens and Tip T.I. got into a little tiff in the middle of the panel speaking. So if you don't know anything about Candace Owens, I'll give you a little background on her. Candace Owens first kind of got into the news when she was the victim of some racial attacks by some young white men that went to her high school. And one of the boys was the mayor of Stamford, Connecticut, his son. So she got embroiled in a lawsuit against the Stamford public school system because apparently they called her names, they threatened her life. She was affected negatively by it, and nothing was done about it. So the NAACP assisted her family in filing that lawsuit, and Standard Public School System ended up actually settling with them for an amount. If you want to look in more of that, you can Google that too. So her next kind of claim to fame or infamy is she developed or was trying to develop a website / database called Social Autopsy, where it basically was a way to dox students, children, who people felt were being bullying people online. And she was going to hawk this to schools so that they could then know the activities and know who the children were online and what they were doing. I guess she thought that was a great idea, but she ended up getting a ton of backlash for it, and well-deserved, because children do not need to be doxed and have their addresses, their name, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, social media accounts, parents' information out there on the internet, regardless of what they're doing online. So she got a lot of backlash from that, from the left, because she was on the left. And I guess her reaction to that was to suddenly become red pill. Now, if the term red pill comes from The Matrix, where Morpheus tells Neo, you can take the blue pill and stay in the Matrix, which we know is a fake construct, or you could take the red pill and wake up You'd have to leave the matrix, but you'll wake up to reality. So that has become like a political metaphor for a person being a liberal or a Democrat and suddenly waking up and becoming either leaving the Democrat, leaving the left, or going to the right, or whatever. So she developed this YouTube series called Red Pill Black, where she describes her journey to becoming a conservative and moving from the left to the right. Prior to this red pilling, she was very anti-Trump. I believe she might have had a blog or something that was anti-Trump, but now she was suddenly on the Trump train. She has an interview with Dave Rubin that you can Google. He interviews people, but where she explains that her process of becoming red pilled and what she now thinks of the left and everything. So, fast forward to 2 years ago, last year, whatever, Kanye West tweeted out that he liked her thinking, and then that kind of morphed into this Blexit movement where she was going to lead, like Harriet Tubman, lead all black people off of the Democratic plantation. So her rhetoric, she started using plantation rhetoric to describe all of you black folks that vote Democrat, have stayed with the Democratic Party. She's calling us or you slaves, and she kind of became like really big in the movement, the conservative movement, and amongst white conservatives using this language. I personally say she became an avatar to be able to talk trash about black people in a way white people couldn't do because they might get criticized for it or be accused of being racist or what have you. So she developed a whole grift, and I say grift because she's making bank off of this, a grift by basically talking down black people to a white audience. If you look at any of her Blexit events, any of the videos, you will see her audience is predominantly white. But supposedly she is trying to free us from the Democratic plantation. So as you can imagine, for the black people that even heard of her, that message is not resonating. We don't want to be told we're slaves. We don't want to be told that we are mindless. We're infantile. We don't know what we're doing. We can't think. Black people that vote, they're making a conscious decision to vote for who they think serves their best interests. Period. End of story. We are not going into a voting booth and just like, I'm going to vote for a Democrat. The problem is the Republican Party has not sought out the black vote for a while. They have not catered a message to black voters, and they have not come to talk to the black community. So when faced with that, it is no wonder that most black people vote Democrat. Now, Candace Owens turns that argument around to make it seem like black people are mindless, that we're just doing it just because, that there's no history behind why black people have moved to the Democratic Party. And if you look up the history of the Lily White movement, the Southern strategy, you will see why black people started voting Democrat. Because remember, we used to be Republicans. We're still conservative generally, but we used to be Republicans. So she has used very negative rhetoric to talk about Black people that don't share her political ideology, and she has been making a ton of money off of it. Charlie Kirk hired her as TPUSA, and TPUSA was kind of like a college campus reform, or trying to MAGA college campuses, or put the conservative message out on college campuses. So she became they were accused of racism. And there was a lot of emails and stuff going around from TPUSA employees that were racist, pretty racist. So he hired her to kind of cover them for that. And she was his Black outreach person. She did no Black outreach. The only Black folks she's talked to were basically already on the Trump train, already MAGA, already conservatives. But there was no true Black outreach because she has zero connection to the Black community or Black culture. None. So, long story short, she has, if you don't believe what I'm saying, go to her Twitter account, her Facebook, whatever. And when she speaks, see who's answering, who's commenting. It's not us. Who's high-fiving her when she tells us we're slaves and we're living on a plantation and we need to get off the plantation and we're not victims and racism doesn't exist. And it's not Black people. Her audience is almost, I would say, 98% white conservative, which is fine. But don't claim you are working to politically save Black people and help the Black community if you don't come to the Black community, you don't talk to Black people, you don't know Black culture, and most of your audience, including your Blexit audience, are white conservative. Now, if you know about her whole deal with Kanye kind of, I believe he was having a moment, I think he's bipolar. And as you know, bipolar medications can sap your personality. They can take away your creativity. So I think Kanye got off his medication and he was vulnerable to her. And she went and actually kind of used him as a platform for her Blexit movement to elevate it, I guess you would say. So they had a falling out due to her revealing Blexit and saying Kanye was on board and saying he designed his logo for these t-shirts, and the logo was terrible. I'm a graphic designer, the logo was terrible for these t-shirts, and he was like, I didn't. All I did was like say, hey, I know a guy that can do this for you. Here you go. Here's his number. And so Kanye felt used, and he basically was like, I'm done. I'm out of this. And I'm pretty sure his family had some intervention with that because he was kind of spiraling. But anyways, so back to the Revolt Summit. So there's a clip going around, and you can look at that on YouTube, of Candace Owens and T.I. getting in a confrontation. So Candace Owens is a Trump supporter. She is MAGA, Make America Red Hat, all the way. So he asked her directly, what does Make America Great Again, MAGA, mean for Black people? When was America great for Black people? A very direct question. Now, a little background on that. A lot of Black Americans had an adverse reaction to the slogan, Make America Great Again, because we have been moving forward. We don't want to go back, because going back means civil rights, Jim Crow, not having voting rights, mass incarceration, all these things that we don't want to go back to. So when we heard MAGA, we're kind of like, well, what does that mean for us? Because what are we going back to? We don't want to go back to a period where our men were being jailed with that crime bill. I mean, that's still happening, but we don't want to go back to the drug wars of the 80s and the crack epidemic and the neglect we received from the crack epidemic. We don't want to go back to the 60s, 70s, and 50s where we were living under Jim Crow and we had to fight for civil rights. And, you know, our leaders were being assassinated. Like, we don't want to go back to that. So we always said, when was America great for us? What does that mean for us? What does MAGA mean for Black Americans? So basically, that's what he was asking her. So her first words were, slavery happened all over the world. Now, T.I. reacted very strongly to that. He kept telling her, now he was basically talking over her, but he got upset and kept saying, answer the question. She kept saying, I will. And then she would go, slavery happened all over the world. Let me tell you why that was problematic. That slavery happened all over the world is used against Black people to diminish and dilute our American experience, and I'm saying Black descendants of slaves, our American experience from the bonds of slavery and the brutality of slavery and the specific type of chattel slavery that Black Americans had to suffer when we were brought here on the ships for hundreds of years, and the residual damage that has done in all levels of how we exist now in America. So he asked her again, and she tried to go there again. He didn't want to hear any of it. So basically, it turned into a disaster. Now, that phrase, slavery existed all over, is the same, we have the same reaction to it when we discuss police brutality, extrajudicial executions of Black men in the street, judicial inequity. When we speak about those things, when people say to us, all lives matter, that becomes, that's basically telling us what you're experiencing is not really a thing. All lives matter. So, you know the whole issue with that. So basically, when we hear statements that basically are telling us, I'm about to enter this conversation diminishing your concerns and diminishing and minimizing your experience, that doesn't fly. Candace was caught off guard for that because she is not used to being in, I would say, hostile, I wouldn't even call it hostile territory. I guess it is. But speaking in front of a predominantly Black audience that are predominantly rooted in Black culture that come from predominantly Black environments. That is not her typical audience. So that answer wasn't, or the beginning of that answer to the question was not flying with anybody, especially T.I. And he kind of acted out of pocket a little bit. He could have let her finish what she was going to say, but he didn't, because immediately going to a space of, I'm about to diminish what you're saying, I'm about to diminish something about the Black experience, that raises a lot of feelings and emotion in people. So Killer Mike, they got in a little shouting match. Killer Mike took over and he answered the question. And he answered the question very concisely. He was well received. He said, which could be debatable, America was great for Black people in the 7 years after the Civil War. And his point was basically, In that kind of area, we were able to gain some economic advantages, political advantages, and social advantages. We were owning land. Unfortunately, we were still under the same system that had us in slavery. So it was taken, once we kind of got too prominent, it was taken away from us. And that was the period I was talking about where a lot of Black Republicans, the Texas Republican Party was started by Black people. Tidbit to know that. And that goes into the Lily White movement and all that. And basically that was, the Republicans were trying to win politically, but they were losing white voters to the Democrats because of the inclusion of Black people in the Republican Party. So they tried to expel us to kind of clean up the party to make it more palatable to get the white voters. So the reason why Candace couldn't answer this question is because her goal was never to advocate political freedom from the Democratic Party for Black people. Her goal was, if I use this rhetoric and I speak like this and I talk to people, I will become popular with white conservatives. A lot of white conservatives love to have Black conservatives, especially Black conservative women. So she couldn't answer that question in a way that it needed to be answered for her audience there at Revolt to get the message. Killer Mike was, because why? He is genuinely in it for the well-being of Black Americans. This is not his career. He also is rooted in the culture of the people he was speaking to. He's from Atlanta. And he knew the answer to the question. And I give Candace kudos for even stepping on that stage, because she has been criticized greatly for avoiding directly bringing her message to the Black community, which made it so she wasn't trusted and made it look like her intentions were not genuine. I'm not in her head. I really don't know what, to be honest, I don't know if she's genuine or not. What it appears to be is just this like big grift, because now she's married to some white European guy that's like a billionaire who part of Brexit or whatever. But she started off here and she has skyrocketed to fame and fortune with this whole Brexit thing. Now let me tell you about Brexit. Brexit doesn't exist. Brexit is not a real thing. There is no mass migration from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. The midterms prove that. And I'm not saying it couldn't be the case the next election cycle, but there's no Brexit. So she was living in this Brexit delusion, and she brought that to this Revolt stage. Now, she made some good points. She did. But the packaging that meal was in didn't look good for people. So when I don't like the packaging, I'm not going to pick up and look what's inside of it to see if I want to eat it or not. If it looks nasty, if the colors are wrong, if it don't look like I don't know what it is, it looks suspect, I'm not eating it. So basically that was what happened to her. Now, because of her Brexit delusion, she didn't prepare herself properly for entering in that environment, because what she's used to is spewing out her talking points about Black people being on, and she said all this there, Democratic plantation, we're slaves, we don't think for ourselves, blah, blah, blah. She's used to saying that to applause. She didn't get any applause. So it was on her to prepare herself better for this event. But I'm glad she showed up, because I'm not a fan of Candace Owens at all. I think she's detrimental, but maybe she's having a turnaround. And I hope she does, because it's my opinion Black people should be politically diverse. We shouldn't hold allegiance to any party. We should, whoever it is that we feel could help our family, our community we live in, and the country as a whole is the best, that's who we should pick. I believe in political independence. I am not a Democrat or Republican. I do lean center left, but I can agree with conservative principles and conservative ideas. I can look at things on the left and agree with those. So, also, if you remember, Candace Owens actually sat in front of Congress maybe a couple months ago. It was a while ago, to talk about issues of like white supremacy and terrorism and all that stuff. And I don't think she performed well there either, because once again, it was a bunch of talking down to Black people that didn't have her political views. And then when she was backed into an intellectual corner, she went towards you're racist and you think Black people are stupid and blah, blah, blah. Well, Candace, you think Black people are stupid because you keep telling us if we vote Democrat, we're not thinking about it. We're just going there and go, pull the lever for Democrat. So she had a rough time there, and I think it was a wake-up call for her. I don't know if she's ever going to go back into that kind of environment again. I know there are some Black conservatives, and when I say conservatives, I mean they're conservatives that happen to be Black. They're not Black conservatives. They're not the superstars, but they believe in conservative principles, and they believe they are better for the Black community. They're not necessarily telling you who to vote for. They're not essentially Trump supporters exactly, but they believe in capitalism and the family and things that would be normally, they're against socialism and stuff like that, which, is fine to disagree with, but they're thinking those are better principles for Black people to live by, that would help elevate us out of some of the conditions we're in, especially in our inner cities. So I know Sunny Johnson, she has a show on Sirius XM. I follow her on Twitter. She was trying to get on Candace's show. Candace has a show with Prager University, her own show with a little cute studio and everything. Like I said, she went from social autopsy and just kind of here to like stardom. So she invited Sunny Johnson on her show a couple of times and canceled on Sunny Johnson all 3 times she invited her. Or someone that works for her invited Sunny Johnson and Candace canceled. And I think that's because Sunny Johnson is very brash. She is hard on the ears sometimes with her language, but she's in the Black community, very much into the hip-hop community. And she has spoken in front of a Black audience with very left people and had no problems. And she has gotten people clapping for her, nodding, whatever. Again, the packaging has to be appealing for people to want to eat the food inside. So Sunny has the packaging and she has the message that she thinks is better for us. Not that I agree with her on everything, but I can have dialogue with her just fine because her intentions are sincere or appear to be sincere. Like I said, I'm not in people's heads. But Candace Owens canceled on her 3 times. What that told people was, when faced with an actual pro-black conservative, Candace didn't want none of that smoke. Because she would have to be called out on some of her rhetoric and some of the things she does. And I don't think she was ready to confront something like that. Now, at the Revolt Summit, the whole purpose of that was the honest benefit or betterment of Black America. Because like they say, when the rest of the country has a cold, Black America has the flu. So we're still experiencing flu that we need to cure. So you can't come in that with cold medicine and, tea and honey. We need some Tamiflu. So Killer Mike had Tamiflu. Candace Owens had some homeopathic water pills. And we didn't want no homeopathic water pills. So my advice to Candace Owens, if you are sincere about trying to, I guess, lead Black people off the Democratic plantation, then, which I hate saying that, I ain't even saying it, then you need to be connected to the people you're trying to so-called help. And that means stop talking about us to other people. Stop talking down to us, diminishing us, trashing us for other people. Stop doing it for money. Because once you start not doing that, them paychecks might dry up. And then, you need to live in your authentic self. And what I mean by that is recognize that regardless of your political views, you're still a Black American. You are one of us at the end of the day. And if you are in a political movement that does not allow you to be able to say that, I am a Black American. I am proud to be Black American. I am concerned about Black people. I'm not going to let you talk about Black people. I'm not going to trash Black people to you. If you're not in a movement where you can say, I am not going to talk bad about my people for your entertainment, then you need to rethink that. Because no Black person wants to be, we're already dealing with a whole bunch of stuff. No Black person wants to be in a party that is entertained by or wants to hear us being trashed. A la Jesse Lee Peterson, a la ABL, a la Brandon Tatum, a la Larry Elder. So I'm proud of you for showing up to the Revolt. I think you have you got a dose of reality there, and I think you need to step back a minute and maybe think about what you're trying to do and who you're trying to talk to and what your goals are, because this is not the way. I'm all for Black people being Republican, Democrat, Independent, Green Party, whatever. But until we see some tangibles or some messaging as a whole that is catered to us specifically, because regardless of this being a diverse nation, everybody has their own stuff they're dealing with, and stuff needs to be specifically addressed. Republicans go out to the farmers. They go out to the coal miners and talk to them. They go to the suburban soccer moms and talk to them. They go to the Protestant churches, or evangelical churches and talk to them, they need to be in the South Bronx or in the Bronx. They need to be in Baltimore. They need to be on the south side of Chicago talking to people. And let me give a shout out to the persistent, I can't remember his name, but he is a MAGA Trump supporter. You can find him on Twitter. He has been down in Baltimore wearing, helping them clean up. Because I don't know if you've seen those videos. Baltimore is a mess. And he has been down there helping them clean up. And that's what if you truly care about Black people being better, then you need to do stuff like that. Show us. Come talk to us. Come to our hoods. Come see what we're all about. Don't talk back. Don't diminish us. Show us some love. And you know what? We'll have, because we are forgiving people. We will open our arms up to you and embrace you. Even if we don't agree with anything you say. Okay? Peace.